There's a freedom that I feel when I'm out here. The crisp breeze, the cool air. But there are times when it all feels so heavy and I feel like I can't breathe. And all I want is to run. All I want is to be free. All I want is to live. All I want.
Welcome to Carleton University's School of Social Work Black History Committee's event entitled Black History is Every Month. We'd like to begin by acknowledging that the land on which we gather is the traditional, unceded, and unsurrendered territory of the Algonquin Anishinaabeg people. The Algonquin peoples have lived on this land since time immemorial. We are grateful to have the opportunity to be present in this territory. While acknowledging territory is only the beginning of cultivating strong relationships with Canada's First Peoples, we will continue to be active allies to Indigenous peoples when it comes to working together and combating some of our jointly experienced challenges in Canada. When we assist in bringing attention to the ongoing colonialism of Indigenous peoples and lands, we highlight the shared challenges of all oppressed peoples. As the Black community nears the middle of the UN's International Decade for People of African Descent, we recognize the settler colonial histories that have impacted and continue to impact the diasporic communities of the African continent. In particular, we must acknowledge that structural inequalities in society result in differential access to and differential distribution of power for Black people in Canada and around the world, and in most cases leaves Black Canadians subjected to unequal treatment. While many of us have a low tolerance for racism, we must acknowledge that anti-Black racism is still very active here in Canada, and this systemic racism against Black individuals can be seen in areas of employment, education, healthcare, and policing. There are a wide range of strategies being adopted to address this inequality. There are movements such as Black Lives Matter, grounded in politics, challenging anti-Black racism and pushing for and demanding social change. There's also been a commitment from social work practitioners to develop practices that have a social justice, equity, diversity, and inclusive focus. As a profession, we have made significant progress in addressing these inequities. However, we still have a lot of work to do when it comes to ensuring accountability to and from various stakeholders as it relates to ending anti-Black racism. At the forefront of the 21st century, Black people in Canada have and continue to make significant contributions in society. However, Black people's successes are often downplayed by conscious and unconscious biases held by society. In spite of this, Black individuals have used their misfortunes and turned them into triumphs. In a country filled with promise and hope for Black communities, we celebrate the efforts and contributions of Black Canadians beyond the traditional Black History Month that is held in February. Black history is every day. Black history is beautiful. Black history is us. It's our respect for Black history and year-long conversations on Black history that will help guide our appreciation for this very important part of Canadian history. Through this appreciation, we are hopeful to create a brighter tomorrow that celebrates unity, resilience, and lifts every voice.
Lift every voice and sing till earth and heaven ring with a harmony of liberty. Let our rejoicing rise high as the listening skies. Let it resound loud as the rolling sea. Sing a song full of the faith that the dark past has taught us. Sing present has brought us, facing the rising sun of a new day begun. Let us march on till victory is won. Facing the rising sun of a new day begun. Let us march on till victory is won. Let us march on till victory is won.
I am the founder of Presidential Basketball, which is a social enterprise that is dedicated to bridging the gap faced by disadvantaged youth. And the reason why I do what I do is because throughout my journey as a basketball player, I saw a lot of, I would say, things done wrong. So I'll start off at the high school level. In Ottawa, and it's not just in the basketball community, but if a kid is going through some tough times and acts disrespectful, he can be labeled uncoachable. And once he's labeled uncoachable, he sees his post-secondary opportunities shorten. And then you get into the post-secondary stuff. Coaches, they promise you the world, and then you ask them to write it down, and all of a sudden those promises disappear. And then you get to the professional level where people are fighting for 1 or 2 spots. So there's so much things that go behind basketball, and I thought it was my responsibility to show kids that want this to be their journey, what it really takes, and make sure that while I'm showing them, we're laying a foundation of love so that every time that it gets difficult on their journey, they can go back to the source and understand, if I got love as my source, it's untappable. Being Black is a privilege, and with that privilege comes responsibility. And you're always gonna face things as a Black man. Some of the things that I've faced in my life and in my journey is a constant, a consistent form of, I guess, undermining. And what I mean when I say that is, sometimes I get into spaces and I'm seen as not able to produce the same amount of work as everybody else. I'm looked upon as not being able to be a coach, for example, or this or that. Let's just throw those labels out there. But I'm coming into this space with a lot of experience, professional experience, high school experience. I'm talking about all Canadian. I'm talking about all these kind of awards that I've won. But I'm seen as somebody that has to work 10 times harder to get an opportunity with someone that does not have my resumes. And I've consistently seen this, and I think there's a lot that goes behind that. But I think with that is also the key to success, right? Because that working 10 times harder, when you get down to the times where you meet that fire, because in every job opportunity, in every journey, in every exploration, there's gonna be a time where you're under fire, right? How are you gonna react? You're gonna react calm and cool because you put in the reps. So those reps always show out later on because you went through that fire. So you gotta appreciate all your trials, no matter how hard it is. A lot of people want instant gratification, and that's not reality, man. Everything that you want takes time to get, and you have to be able to go through that time so that you can see it turn from a seed into a tree and produce fruit, you know? People want to harvest when it's still in the ground. Like, nah, it doesn't work like that. So how do I overcome? I go through it, you know? And I go through it gracefully and with integrity, because I understand that at the end of that trial or whatever, it's exactly what I want. One way to overcome stereotypes that you're gonna face as a Black male or a Black woman is being very comfortable with yourself. That's very important. Before you leave your house, ask yourself, who are you trying to impress? You know, who do you need your acceptance from? Is it coming from the people that live with you, or is it coming from people outside that household? And if it's coming from people that necessarily do not motivate or fuel you in any way, then you really gotta look at your situation, because Leaving your house without a foundation, eventually you're gonna crumble. I don't believe in self-made, I think it takes a community to help to get you to your success. And there's been a lot of people that has influenced my success. I'm grateful for my parents, and the reason why is because I've seen their sacrifice. We were born in a time where there was genocide and civil war happening in my country. So for them to go through that, put their dreams and their expectations on hold and get us into a safe position by getting us over here. I think a lot of us first generation kids forget about that. We grew up in this space with all this opportunity, and it's so much opportunity that we just don't get started. And you got to understand that there was a reason why we came here. There's a reason why you have that opportunity, whether it's people that died or didn't die but sacrificed for that. Kobe was my era. Kobe taught me lessons in determination and work ethic that I couldn't get from no other player. Like, I used to put like 8 to 12 hours into my game, and that's not just physically, that's going home after and studying my own game tape, reading books about what I wanted in the future. So I think that I would go with Kobe with that, rest in peace, and I hope that he's watching what we're doing with the kids in the community from up there, and he's appreciating that we love the game because you showed us how to love it. The way we create safe and brave spaces within presidential is I do things a lot differently. When I meet a youth, the first thing I try to do is understand his soul. And if you take time to understand his soul, you understand what they're lacking. Some kids come in with so much confidence. So what you're really looking to do is help him understand his ego so that he can understand how to move forward without it. And some kids don't come in with a lot of confidence, and you kind of have to give them confidence until they're able to take on that responsibility themselves. So I think it's very important to get in touch with their soul and allow them to understand, kind of pull it out that darkness so that they can shine, I think it's very important to have Black History Month, and there's many reasons why it's important, but the reason I think is important is that we get an opportunity to share stories of our own narrative. Growing up, hearing about Black culture in the Western world, it started at slavery. And I know my parents weren't slaves. I know my ancestors weren't slaves. So you gotta dig deeper. You gotta ask your parents, what is our history? Why is my name Manak? Why was my uncle's name Manak? Why was his uncle named Manak? Why do we pass around these names from generation to generation? I think there's a disconnect right now that's happening between the young and the old. And it's a disconnect because the world is changing so fast that the understanding between generations is lacking. And I think it's very important to understand what's come before you so you can understand how to move forward. Black History Month is not every month. Black History Month is every day. And the reason why I say that is there's so much influence in the world that's come from Black culture, from Nubian to Kemet and what Kemet, ancient Egypt, I guess is what they call it. There's so many influences from Black culture in the world. So I think it's very important before you leave your house every day to appreciate how much of an influence your culture has made in the world. You look at the industries right now, from music to dance to even sports, and it's all being driven by a person of color. The way I live Black history every single day is I appreciate everything that I have, and that and know that, and appreciate it in a way where I understand that it can be taken at any point and I still have to live in that space, right? I really understand that most days, that conversation that we have, with ourselves, I practice meditation and I've believed that I've been channeling my ancestors for a long time. And that channel has allowed me to get into a space where I've seen all the success that I've wanted in my life. And it's because they tell you what's next. And if you listen, and not listen in a way where you're hearing words, sometimes it comes in a feeling. But if you learn how to listen, I think it'll pave the way. So how I live Black history every single day is I channel my ancestors and I ask them what's next when I'm lost. And when I'm doing good, I channel them and I thank them for everything that they've given me. In order to build a healthy and inclusive community, I'll speak on presidential. Presidential, when you first come into presidential, I've taken so much time to build the foundation. What you're gonna notice is it's an environment of love and family. And I think human nature says that we fear what we don't understand. I think it's very important for us to provide spaces where we can understand one another's culture and express it in a way that's given through the person's eyes as opposed from the eyes of someone looking from the outside in. And I think the more we get to understand each other, our cultures, our customs, and why we do what we do, the fear will start to lessen, and there'll be spaces where we can actually grow together as opposed to growing on one side and growing on the other side. When I think about Black progression within Canada, I'm most proud of, since the George Floyd incident, we got to present to the world what's been happening behind closed doors. So first, rest in peace, George Floyd. I'm most proud of this whole movement that's been going on. Like, I grew up in a space where Black people were not really helping each other get to that next stage. We were holding each other down, you know? And now all I really see is brothers picking each other's up, brothers lending each other their resources, and and I see that's a very beautiful future, because I understand that no man grows alone. So once we start to understand how to unify, the way we're gonna grow is going to be crazy. One thing I would like to see in the field of work that I'm in is more people that look like me. I find myself in a lot of spaces that don't reflect me, and I don't think all spaces need to reflect me, but I do think that in order to really make a change in the Black community, the change has to come from the Black community. And right now we have a lot of people that are in different positions, and they're making decisions for areas where they no longer live or do not have any ties to. If they weren't getting paid to be in this position, would they come and give back to this area? So we need to start putting people in a position where they're able to make change for themselves. When we're thinking about community centers in areas, in inner city areas in the city, we need to start looking to employ people from that area. That way there's a commitment to that space that goes outside of that 9 to 5 that they're getting paid for. They walk down that same street to get to that same workplace every single day, and they meet the same people. So that means there's a community being actually developed, as opposed to someone coming from the outside, being in that space only for a certain amount of time and then leaving. There's no real change that's coming from that. There's a change in terms of you're providing work, but if that's the goal, then I guess you've met it. I think one thing that 2020 taught me that I think can help shape the minds of future generations is heal. I think it's very important. A lot of us are going through a lot of things, and we're accumulating trauma, and we're not taking the time to even just breathe and understand what we went through, and even just let go of that baggage in a healthy and a proper way. So I think in order to really make decisions with a clear perspective, we need to first heal from all the things that we went through, so that we can see something that makes sense, as opposed to seeing our hurts and our doubts and our insecurities. My mantra in life is health, wealth, mastery of self. So I think that it's very important for you to challenge yourself to really get to understand who you are. And one thing that we live from, there's a saying in my country, it's as above, so below. Everything that you can find on the outside of you, you can find on the inside of you. So I challenge you all to take some time to do some soul searching in 2021, especially while things are locked down, and really understand where you want to go next.
I heard there was a secret chord that David played, and it pleased the Lord. But you don't really care for music, do you? It goes like this: the fourth, the fifth, the minor fall, and the major lift. The baffled king composing Hallelujah, 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 Hallelujah. I know that there's a God above, but all I've ever learned from love was how to shoot at someone who outdrew you. It's not a cry that you hear at night. It's not someone who has seen the light. It's a cold and it's a broken hallelujah. 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 Hallelujah.
I am the executive director at Black North Initiative. It's an organization that came together within corporate Canada to eradicate anti-Black racism. And we have been at it for a couple of months now and working with hundreds of signatories across the country that represent about $1.3 trillion of the market cap, so a vast portion of the corporate Canada, and trying to change the way that anti-racism and anti-Black racism presents itself in corporate Canada. And so it's been incredible to do this work and excited to see what's coming. And so that's what I do during the day. Some of the other things that I do is that I work for our Justice for Abdi coalition. I was a founder of the coalition, and we fought for a young man that was 37 years old and who was killed by an Ottawa police member. And it's been 4.5 years now since it happened, and we have been fighting for justice for him, for his family, for people that look like me, and trying to see what we can do to eradicate some of the barriers that exist in our justice system when it comes to Black people. And so that's part of the work that I've been doing. I also do a lot of mentoring for Black our younger population. They say that over 70% of the population in Canada that is Black is a young population. Therefore, there's such an opportunity for us to impact the way that our younger generations see the world, the way that they have access to opportunities, the way that they grow, they develop, they learn, and they potentially and hopefully become prosperous. And so I've been doing a lot of work with our youth and making sure that they can see themselves in many different facets of their lives, and that there's not just one way of being happy, that there's many different ways, and everything is possible, and the stars is where they should aim for. And so doing a lot of that work with our younger generations as well. The reason why I do what I do is because my father, God rest his soul, passed away a very, very long time ago. I was 9 years old when he passed, and he left a legacy behind that I took on with pride and with joy. And he was a peacemaker in Somalia, and he died trying to save his people. And he was only 42 years old. And, I remember thinking, why did my dad pass away? Why did I lose him? And I kept thinking that for a very long time. And I remember finally realizing, as I read stories about him, as I heard stories about him, as I reflected on some of the things that he told me himself when I was younger, is that there's no life worth living unless it's in service of others. And so he did whatever he could to support his community and trying to uplift them from poverty, trying to uplift them from economic disasters, and all sorts of amazing things that he knew that our community can do. And so he left that legacy behind for me, and I took upon it for myself to do what I could to fulfill his part in the world. And so I do what I do not only for him, but for all of those people that will be benefactors of my work. I think one of the things that I'll probably remember that's impacted my life in terms of historical event, there's a number of things, but one that I remember very vividly is right after 9/11. And I remember that specifically because I was still a young girl, and it was a young girl who is Somali. I was a young girl who wore hijab. And so my person and the things that made me who I was now turned into something that was awful, that was turned into something that was negative. And I remember thinking, I wanted to hide from the world. I didn't want to be a part of a society that saw me as a weapon, that saw me as something they needed to be afraid of, something that was evil. And so I remember thinking to myself that, I wanted to be in a place where people saw what it meant to put on the hijab, to be a Muslim, to be a Black Muslim woman. I remember thinking it was important to be able to showcase the beauty of the hijab and allow that to be the narrative and not the narrative around Muslims being terrorists. That was something I kept hearing over and over again. It was also the first time that my hijab was torn off in a bus, and it was torn off by 4 people at the same time. And I remember feeling like I just didn't want to be in the world anymore. I didn't see myself part of society anymore. I was now a thing that was put aside and hated. And I remember thinking, this isn't okay. And so that changed my view on the world. It changed my view on what it meant for me to be a Black Muslim woman today. And then the work that I needed to do for that image to no longer be the story of our lives, and not having another little Dahabo have her hijab torn off. And so it is one thing that changed the trajectory of the way that I saw the world, but it's also the thing that empowered me to do the work that I needed to do for my people, and not to let those challenges and those incidents and those experiences turned me away from serving my people. And so I kept going, and I keep going, and I'm still going, and I won't stop, because I think it's important for us to be able to see this to the end of the tunnel, and that light that's right there, it's still beaming. Sometimes it's a very small light, and sometimes it's almost not there, but it is there, right? So I want to keep the hope, and I think that when people look at me, I want them to see hope. I want them to see a better tomorrow. I want them to see an option, an opportunity, a possibility, something that, may not be evident, but is there, right? So I want to keep that hope alive as much as I can. Some of the barriers that I have to overcome as a person of African descent is my color. I think that my color is the best part of me. It's the first thing that you see. It's my beauty, and I carry it with pride. But unfortunately, it's been weaponized. Unfortunately, it's been used against me, and unfortunately, it's been portrayed to be something that is not beautiful. And so, my skin is unfortunately one thing that is my barrier. One of the other things that is a barrier for me is my hijab. I'm in a world right now where some parts of this world do not allow women to wear their hijab and go to work. I'm in a place right now where wearing the hijab, you are a target. People focus on you, and they say certain things that are not representative of who you are. But a hijab on a woman's head, unfortunately, does not allow her to be able to thrive. That's definitely a challenge for me, and it's been a challenge consistently, even today, where I am now. I think one of the other challenges is being a woman. Women are belittled, we're minimized, we're put to the side. We are not given the authority, we're not given the delegated authority, we're not given the space, the platform, the opportunities that many others get. And so if you can imagine being Black, being a woman, and being a Muslim woman, the level of compounding barriers that come with that. But I can tell you that I am someone who is up for the challenge. I think that I want people to see that, in fact, it is an asset. It is what makes me special, what makes me unique, what makes me up to the task, that I bring in a diversity of thought, I bring in a diversity of perspective, I bring in strength, I bring in, the ability to overcome challenges and still stand firm on the ground and not crumble. And I think all of those things have actually allowed me to overcome more and more challenges. And so it's not a easy thing to do, but it's a must. We don't have a choice otherwise. I think the way that we can, in the sort of the political sphere, how do we sort of garner more support, and how do we sort of advance our issues? One of the main things that we need to do is we need to unify. the Black community, it's actually Black communities for a reason, because of the variety of backgrounds, languages, faiths, colors. Like, there's just so much to who we are as people who are Black. I mean, I think Black is what actually unites us, but if you go deeper into the Blackness, there's so many parts of who we are. And I think it's important for us as people to unite and to, be able to look at each other and say there are differences, but I think our similarities and the challenge we face and the obstacles that come before us are grander and greater in nature, and we can't do this without each other. And so it's important as Black communities, when it comes to changing the political landscape, that we're able to do this in a unified manner, because nothing about us should ever be done without us, and without us, we don't have anything. And so I truly believe that it's important for us to be able to stand shoulder to shoulder, arm in arm, be able to build trust, build relationships, and look at each other and say, I'm gonna fight for you and you're gonna fight for me. I think that's the part that is so overwhelmingly powerful, is that if Black communities can come together and say, I'm gonna be there for you just as much as you're gonna be there for me, and I'm gonna protect you just as much as you're gonna protect me, and I won't allow anything to get to you as much as you won't allow anything to get to me, we will be so prosperous. I can see it, and it's a beautiful sight to see. I think one of the other successes that I can probably, that I'm proud of, is how much I fought for Abdurrahman Abdi. He was a man who I have never met in my entire life. Not one day have I met him, never laid my eyes on him. And he was someone who completely changed the way that I saw the world. They say that in life you have a couple of moments that change your life and where you're gonna go. They're called moments of awakening, and I've had them throughout my life. When my father passed was one moment, when my hijab was torn off was another, when my grandmother passed, who was, I'm raised by my grandmother, and I remember thinking, what am I gonna do in this world without the woman who fed me, who made me grow as a person? And so that was another moment, I guess, for me that changed my life. But Abdurrahman Abdi was definitely another moment of awakening for me, where a young man with mental health issues who died in a horrific way, and in front of his family, in front of his mother, in front of his sisters, in front of his brothers. That was, to me, one of the things that made me, I felt as though the world was not right. I felt like something is wrong here, something is not okay. And I thought to myself, if I don't do something, if I don't do it, then who will? And I want people to ask themselves that question, like, what can I do? The internal, unique perspective of a person and what they can bring into a situation is actually what allows us to grow. If every single person in the world said to themselves, what can I do? What can I actually do? There's so much that can be done, right? And so I remember thinking, I'm gonna do something. I had no idea what it was. I didn't know what I was gonna do. I just knew that I was gonna do something. And so going from attending the first meeting that had 500 people in it, 500 Black people, beautiful Black people that came together to suffer together and to mourn together, but also say to themselves, what are we gonna do next? I stood there, I didn't leave. From us creating the Justice for Abdi Coalition, from the first meeting to the last meeting, I didn't leave. I showed up. It's important for us to show up and not to leave. And it was hard. It's hard because Abdurrahman was like a brother to me. Even though I never met him, I saw my brother Samatar in him. I saw my cousin Sahel in him. I saw my brother Umar in him. He was someone I can recognize. And I remember thinking, this could have been any of my people, and he was my people. And so I protested, I went to meetings, I wrote reports, I complained, I shouted, I advocated, I did everything that I can possibly do, but I showed up, and I'm proud of that. I'm proud to have shown up, because it's hard to be Black and to fight for Black people. It's hard to be re-traumatized. It's hard to do that every day. And I don't know if people know the level of impact that it has on you, but it is hard. And I'm proud that I actually did not give up and will not give up, right? It isn't easy to do that, but And it's not hard to admit when you're proud of yourself either, right? So it's awkward for me to say that now, but I am proud now. Well, I wouldn't be here today if it wasn't for him either. Some of the work that we're doing at Black North Initiative to advance the work of prosperity of Black folks generally is to change the way that you do your recruitment, that you're making sure that you have representation, and that the reality is that the long excuse of there's not enough Black talent isn't there anymore. There is Black talent. You just have to go looking for Black talent, right? So it's making sure that our leadership positions and leadership sort of tables, including boards and C-suites, are populated with Black talent, making sure that that diversity of thought is there. And not just to have, when we talk about representation at Black North, we're not just saying put a Black person in a leadership role. We're saying that you put a Black person in a leadership role that allows them to succeed. Because a lot of people can go into these high-placed roles, right? But if they're not set up for success, if they're not set up to be able to thrive and to bring in their ideas and be supported, be uplifted, then they'll fail. So that's not representation. Representation is actually allowing the multifaceted person and who they are into that space and allowing them to actually drive the agenda and drive change. And so I think, one of the big parts of the work that we're doing is sort of changing the leadership tables. Who are the individuals who are driving a company? What do they look like, and what kind of experiences and backgrounds do they represent? So making sure that we have that all the way to building the pipeline. I mean, it's great that we want folks at the leadership role, but what about those that are coming into the job market? What about those that need to be able to learn and to grow and to develop? And so making sure that we are looking at our pipelines and developing that with diverse communities, and not just looking at Black, but also Indigenous people. There are so many similarities between the distinct communities of Indigenous people and Black communities that we're making sure that when we're uplifting each other, we're also uplifting the Indigenous community. Right? So, and those are sort of the two biggest pieces of the pledge. But above and beyond that, we said to ourselves, systemic change is going to take some time. It's not something that's going to happen overnight, because we're now living the two biggest pandemics of our generations, a racial pandemic and COVID-19, right? So the compounding barriers of those two things have only given two choices to Black communities. And so part of the work that we're doing above and beyond our pledge is we have 12 committees that are doing incredible work. And we said to ourselves that while we are working to change the structures, that we're changing, through the pledge, the way that diversity, inclusion, equitable sort of strategies are implemented, while we are doing all that work, that's gonna take time for that dial to change, that shift to happen. We can't tell our communities to wait, And so we're creating all these programs that are allowing for accessibility and opportunity right away. We now have, we partnered with Kids Help Phone Line to do a national Black youth helpline that's called Rise Up. It's going to allow Black youth across the country to get support in a moment of distress. The level of Black youth that have been using the Kids Help Phone Line during COVID has risen at such a disproportionately high rate because of the fact that we're living in a world we've never lived in, and if you know Black communities, you know that mental health is not something we talk about. It's not something it's not something that's even in our language, right? But we now are looking at our younger generation who is seeking help, who is talking about this, and who is calling these Kids Help Phone Line and other places to actually get support. And we said to ourselves, we have to provide an avenue. We have to provide a way for them to get that moment of distress help that they need, right? So Black Youth Helpline is definitely one that we're working on. We're creating a home ownership plan that allows 2,000 Black families to buy a home with a zero down payment and be able to get the charitable sector, the government, corporate sector to all sort of pitch into this one fund that would allow for Black families to go into a new home, and then part of the mortgage would actually go back into the fund and support another family to get into the home. So it's this amazing circle of life that allows for all sort of sectors to be invested in communities. Because when that Black person thrives, their family thrives, and then their kids thrive, and that's creating such a generational wealth that's beyond measure. You can't even measure the impact of that, right? So we said to ourselves that giving people an opportunity to have dignity and have pride in where they live, and being able to look at their children and say they have provided you a safe space to grow in, would allow for all the challenges around mental health, challenges around economic empowerment, all the challenges has to do with safety and community wellness. All of that is being positively impacted by this program. And so those are some of the programs we're working with and making sure that we are able to provide opportunity while the system is changing. One of the big parts of this activism that could be done in so many different levels is that you educate yourself on the issues, you educate yourself on the impacts, you educate yourself on the opportunities that exist, and you educate yourself on the duty that's upon you. You know, they say that even asking yourself that question, like, what can I do, is a privilege. Because people who are in detriment and living in poverty and living in very dire situations don't have time to ask themselves, what can I do? They're living it, there's nothing they can do. But if you have the privilege to ask yourself that question, what can I do? I hope that you can turn that privilege into a duty and be able to say to yourself, what can I do will turn into what will I do? And then you do it, right? So I think critical action really allows you to, you need to have this self-awareness, you know, there's like this self-assessment, and hold up the mirror of justice, hold up the mirror of truth to yourself and say, am I, first of all, part of the problem? And if I am part of the problem, what am I gonna do? What can I do to kind of fix this? All of us have a capacity to do something, whether it's something as simple as calling a friend and seeing if they need any help, whether it's actually posting something on social media, whether it's reading a book, whether it's teaching your children how to be better. That's a big one. That you don't even have to leave the house for that one. Being part of critical action, I think, requires you to look at every part of your life and say, what am I gonna do at home? What am I gonna do if I'm at the gas station, I see something wrong? Am I going to actually talk about it? Am I actually going to speak out against it? What am I gonna do at work when there's promotions that are available and my Black colleagues don't have an opportunity? What am I gonna do when I go to my son's school or my daughter's school and I see that the way that her peers are treated is a little differently? What am I gonna do in every part of my life? Critical action really requires you to look at your entire circle of life and shift it. And it's not an easy thing to do. I don't think that it is. It's such a generational, you know, this is something that's learned. No one's born discriminatory or racist. No one's learned, we learn this. This is something that's been embedded. And so I think that there's some unlearning that needs to happen, and it happens in every part of our lives. And if we are honest with ourselves around where the world is today, first, we would be disappointed. Second, we would have this call to action. And then that should be, so that's an internal thing. That's a very personal thing. And I think it's important for us to be able to look at that and say to ourselves, I have a duty to change the world, you know? While I carry this privilege, you can't just, it's not okay, you know? Blackness being the best thing in the world, it's a beautiful thing. Black people are beautiful people, you know? From our minds, to our hearts, to our contributions, to our heritages, to our culture, to our eyes, our nose, our mouth, everything about Black people is beautiful. And I think this month allows us to really reel that in and live that in and be able to prosper in it. And so I want us to be able to celebrate Black History Month all the time. But the right thing is an easy thing to do in this world. And if we all try to do the right thing, the world will look a lot better. So what I'm most proud of for Black and racialized people is what Black and racialized people have done for themselves. I think that there has been this level of empowerment within our community that has, at least haven't been there in my generation. I think that there's level of understanding and trust and unity that's been there, that's never been there before, at least in my generation again. I am proud of the way that people have looked at each other and have stood up for each other and have stood strong for each other time and time again. You know, we walk into these boardrooms, we walk into these government rooms, we talk to each other in ways that we've never have. We've empowered one another, we have fought for each other, we have protested for each other. We've done so many parts of this work that allows us to lean on one another. And so I'm proud of my people to be able to look at themselves and say, you know, I'm gonna stand for you. You know, you won't be alone in this.
How can I have so many allies and still be so alone? I've realized that many don't understand the power and privilege they exercise when they call themselves an ally, giving themselves titles that their actions haven't earned, but I'm not interested in reposts, retweets, and likes. Do you ever look at the price before paying lip service? I don't want you to stand beside me. I need you on the front lines because we are done validating passports for cultural tourists, exploring our experiences with no checkpoints. Part of the power that comes with privilege is the ability to name things and position yourself in the most advantageous positions, like ally. But if I'm being oppressed every day, what have you done for me today? What parts of your power will you denounce? Now is the time. We are tired from fighting a war that isn't even ours to fight. So what will you do with the privilege and power that you have in this life so that I can recognize your efforts and crown you as an ally?
I went into social work because I've been through a few things in my life. These experiences sort of led me to sort of reflect on the world and the way certain people were treated in the world. And social work is where I sort of like found my place and where I felt like I could make the most change and the most impact. I would say I'm a community worker. I try to be an advocate for my communities. I try to be an advocate for communities who are marginalized. I do the work that I do because I feel like it's important for me, being who I am, coming from where I'm coming from, to represent myself and do this work in a meaningful and important way. I was born and raised in Ottawa. My parents are of Jamaican descent. They both came here in around the 80s, and they met here, and they had myself and my siblings. And growing up, as my parents were very active in community, I got to hear a lot of stories about specifically the Jamaican Canadian community around the police brutality that was happening here. And my parents weren't shy in sharing the different realities of being Black in Canada and just being Black in general and the histories that come with that. So I was sort of raised and I was brought up with the foundation that, it's important to know where you're coming from, to know where you're going, and to sort of be knowledgeable about your history. I like to see my barriers as my influence and my strength and my motivation to move forward. Growing up, my biggest barrier I feel like was poverty. Things sort of got to the point that resulted in my family being homeless for about a year of our life. This was around when I was 11 or 12 years old. And I really see this as sort of my foundation in community work and social work. Being that young and not having a home to go home to, and experiencing poverty at that young age sort of had me realize a lot of things that maybe some kids, shouldn't realize at that age, but it was my reality. And sort of, that's where I sort of got started in community work. Eventually, my family ended up moving out of the shelter system, and from then on and before that, actually, my family spent a lot of time living in Ottawa community housing, and it was there where I sort of, from the age of 13, really got involved in my local community house, making sure that there was safe lighting around my neighborhood. We had sort of a basketball court in our neighborhood, making sure, and it was all broken down, so we ended up. I helped organize a car wash so we can sort of have, our basketball nets to play and have some recreation around the neighborhood. So I feel like from a very young age, I was always committed to sort of seeing my reality, seeing what's happening around me, seeing what we consider barriers, and sort of using that and saying, how can we make the world better? How can I make my life better? How can I make things better for those around me? And that's sort of how I consider my barriers. There's other things as well. As a Black LGBTQ person, it wasn't always easy to sort of not feel isolated in that. So that was a barrier too. I'm so grateful for my elders, my mentors, right here in Ottawa, and all over the world, my ancestors, because if it wasn't for them, then I would not be allowed and I would not have the space to do the kind of work that I do, and have the presence that I have. I think specifically about the folks at Jaku Combat. That's where, as a very young person, laid sort of the foundation for Black history and what Black history meant. Every week I was going to school and I was sort of learning about history, but while I was going to school every week, every Saturday, I was going to something called the Academy of Hero Aset. And there is where I learned about Black history. I learned about Elijah McCoy, Marianne Shad Carey, influential Black people in history. Just learning about these people taught me that our histories are rooted in brilliance and in joy and in innovation. And it's not just all about oppression and slavery and what we went through. Mind you, those things are very real. And those are realities that we have to talk about and have conversations about. But growing up, learning about Black innovators, Black inventors, engaging in Black and cultural arts through an organization like Jaku Combat really allowed me to sort of have the foundation to know that I'm great and I can do great things through my mentors and my ancestors as well. The Black community, I feel like, still has a long way to go in terms of understanding and acceptance towards the LGBTQ community. And I think that the first thing I want to state is that Black LGBTQ people exist. Growing up myself, that's not really something that I understood. Being Black and LGBTQ was probably the worst thing that I thought that I can be. I thought that it was something that was going to make my life harder. I thought that it was something that was going to lead to further bullying. I thought that it was something, especially as somebody who's coming from, a life of chronic poverty, that this was something that was going to sort of further bring me down. And I learned these messages indirectly from the different medias we consumed, especially me being of Jamaican descent, the music, some of the music that comes out that can be sort of read as homophobic or transphobic. Although there might not be folks being blatantly homophobic or transphobic, there are certain indirect messages that we get. Growing up and navigating society that, being of the LGBTQ community is not something that is seen as a good thing, right? And so it was really hard for me to come to terms, that this is who I am. And that led to a lot of isolation, that led to a lot of internalized hatred of myself. But in what I said before, Black LGBTQ people exist. I did find my people. Specifically in Ontario, especially in Toronto, and in Ottawa as well, there's a vast community here of people who are doing work, who are on the front lines, and that's really important. And it was through those folks that I learned that there's so much resilience in our communities, there's so much power, and often Black LGBTQ people are on sort of the front lines, making some of the big changes happen. When I think specifically about being trans, in my upbringing, I thought that, being gay was something that was almost better than being transgender. So when I first came out, I came out as gay. And then I sort of realized that that wasn't true anymore, that my gender was different, right? And the narratives around gender and gender nonconformity and living outside of that were not really things that I saw or that I really understood. But again, in connecting with community, doing a lot of reading, doing a lot of researching, I sort of learned, specifically through an author named Sobonfu Sameh, there are tribes specifically in West Africa and also around the world where folks who transcend the norms of gender and sexuality are actually seen as gifted. They're seen as divine. They're seen as the folks who have access to sort of higher powers and beings and a bridge. And sort of reading that was very impactful for me. And it made me sort of rethink, these indirect messages that I received, that being who I am is sort of looked down upon. I now see who I am as a gift. The experiences that I've lived, my life, what is inside me is a gift. And I'm here to share that. And these conversations, when we talk about LGBTQ inclusion in the Black community, are not always easy. We're working with folks who are maybe a bit younger, who have all the language of the new things that are going on, but we also have to be mindful of our elders as well, who might not have all the language, who might not have all the know-how or access to the information. And other folks as well. So I think that it's important, moving forward as a community, that we have these conversations and we create spaces for LGBTQ Black people to be their full, authentic selves, for them to not have their identities segmented, for them to sort of show up and be able to sort of respect all aspects of themselves. And this starts with conversations. This starts with meeting each other where we're at, with peace, with love, and really understanding, that we're human beings. We're all unique. We come from different experiences. And, in a conversation, in that connection that you can have with a conversation is where we understand each other and we understand each other's stories more. Black history means everything to me. To me, Black history is because I am. There is no me without Black history, right? I think of, my Black ancestors, my Black trans ancestors, Marsha P. Johnson, the number of folks that sort of fought and carved the way and the laws, for me to exist today and to have the things that I have today is super important. If you were to sort of ask little Noah, who's sort of living in the shelter, at such a young age that he would be a community worker who loves what he does, and is married and is happily married, I would not believe you because I did not know that LGBTQ people, Black people, can get married. And I did that. And I could only have done that because there were people before me who fought for that to happen. Black history is every month. Black history is every month because I am living every month. Black history is every month because Black people are living every month. Not only are we living, we're resisting, we're surviving, we're thriving. I think Black folks are so resilient, and with the histories we have, it's traumatic. There's some harsh realities in there, but when I think about it, we've taken our histories and our stories and our traumas and our oppression, and we've turned it into art. If you see the music that we have, the art, anything that Black people engage with, where their histories are sort of at play and impacted, you see the strength in that, and people resonate with that. People, through different mediums, try to sort of tell you that, walking and living as Black is, it can, through the media and through different things going on, you can see that, your life expectancy is shorter, your ability to move around the world to do things is limited. And I think those things are very true, and we have to name those things, but there's also so much you can do. There's so much Black folks can do. There's so much Black folks do. And every moment that we are being Black and we're engaging in our Blackness and we're celebrating our Blackness is Black history. Being strategic in spaces where there are not high representation of ACB folks, to me, means taking care of yourself. Sometimes it can feel really isolating in those spaces, and you can sort of want to do more to improve those spaces. And I think that's completely okay, but it can be pretty tough, especially when you're the only one, or you're sort of realizing things that only you would realize based on your lived experience as an ACB person. So what I think is really important is leaning into your people and your community, and really doing the work that you can do in that space, knowing what the reality is of that space, and taking care of yourself through that. So engaging in self-care, leaning into your community, and really just realizing that folks are just one person, so you can only do what you can, and what you can do is enough, and it helps. My advice to anybody considering or currently engaged in community work and social work is to take care of yourself. Take care of yourself first, because when you take care of yourself, this allows you to take care of others. When you do this kind of work and you're not intentional about taking care of yourself, this can lead to further harm to yourself and your communities. It's really important that you show up with your cup full, or your cup full as you can, and do what you can for the movement and for folks around you and for yourself. And know that these systems under which we're working under, the things we're fighting for, the things we're advocating for, are things that folks have been advocating for decades, for centuries, some would consider. And so these things are slow moving, things are changing, we're progressing in society, but it can be tiring. And burnout is very, very real. And so it's okay to bow out. It's okay to take breaks. It's okay to take care of yourself. And that's something that I really want to emphasize for anybody considering doing this work or anybody currently engaged in this work, is to put yourself first and take care of yourself, and know that you matter in all of this as well. The steps we can take to shape the minds of future generations is to honor them and to listen to them. I am all about intergenerational conversations. Young people can learn from our elders can learn from our young people. And how do we facilitate intergenerational conversations is by showing up and talking to each other and connecting with each other. I think that sometimes when you think about that dichotomy of folks who are older and folks who are younger, both people are doing the work, both kind of populations are doing the work. But oftentimes there's barriers that can come about, of folks who are elders considering folks who are younger, like, what have you been through? You don't really know what I've been through, or I've been through more than you. Or folks who are younger being like, oh, these people just don't get it. They're from a different generation, right? Those things are true, but how do we talk to each other and talk through those barriers and actually listen to each other? When I think specifically about young people, they are the voice of the future. And so hearing them and considering what they're thinking about, what they're going through, is really the thing that's going to push us forward to a better world. The steps we have to take to create and further inclusion is to honor people and meet people where they're at. So when I think specifically about being a Black LGBTQ person, and a Black LGBTQ person who wants to access services, events, resources, anywhere, when they're accessing those services, they want to know that when they show up, their name is going to be respected. What pronouns they use are going to be respected. Who they are is going to be respected. They're not going to face further violence in engaging whatever they're going out to seek. And so really sort of seeing folks, honoring them, honoring who they are, having conversations with them, being nice. I don't think, these conversations, it all starts with a conversation for me. Folks might not understand everything in relation to a community that you're not from, but you don't have to understand everything. You really just have to meet people where they're at. I think, moving forward, when I think about Black folks and Black History Month and Black liberation and Black spaces, it's really important to sort of identify that as Black people, we cannot come up unless we all come up. So as we're engaging in community work and social work, it's important that we, when we're making it and we feel like our voices are being heard and we're being listened to and we're given space, to bring others up with us. So this includes Black LGBTQ folks, Black disabled folks, Black folks of different marginalized identities. We can come up all we want, but if those folks are left behind, then we're doing a disservice to the community.
Professionally, I am a psychotherapist and a mental health manager, and I work as a mental health consultant. I've been working in the mental health field for the past 9 years. I also do work around community advocacy and community development, and a lot of work around equity. I initially get into the mental health field because I recognize that there is a gap in system care for racialized community, especially Black communities. I recognize that there's a chronic absence of Black mental health practitioners and therapists. And I also recognize that traditional mental health systems, treatment modalities, and services are rooted in Western ideals, and they're not responsive to the unique Black experience. So I'm doing this work because I'm committed to continue to advocate for and continue to help construct ethical and accessible mental health support and services and systems for racialized individuals that are rooted in our culture, that are rooted in our wellness and are culturally and racially responsive. Professionally, most of the spaces and people that I navigate around are mostly white individuals in white spaces. And we know that a lot of white spaces has colonial remnants, and a lot of these white spaces reinforces white entitlement. So, and we know that there's a very thin line between white entitlement and white fragility. And we do know that there's a thin line between white fragility and white victimhood. And we do know that there's a thin line between white victimhood and Black and racialized censorship. So based on my social location and based on the fact that most of my work is rooted in equity, I have to constantly ensuring that I'm not compromising and I'm doing the work that can support my community in a comprehensive way, while in the same breath, I have to ensure that I am not triggering white fragility and white victimhood, because ultimately that could lead to Black censorship. So oftentimes this reality puts you in a position where you feel the need to educate or to, validate white feelings and white guilt and ensure that individuals are open to different discussion. I think for me, I choose this profession because I believe in accessible and informed support. And I think my professional training gives me the ability to support and work with the most marginalized individuals from a very comprehensive and informed perspective. The barriers that I experience in my personal and professional lives are constant and persistent because they are systemically informed and maintained. And based on my social location as a Black immigrant woman, I'm forced to occupy many positionality on society oppression hierarchy. So whether that's interracial trauma, interracial poverty, discrimination, racism, etc. And these realities as a Black body, you never really overcome these barriers. You just learn to either coexist or, like myself, commit to consent and challenge these barriers, as to why oftentimes you see a lot of trauma and anxiety in Black bodies, because uncertainty and disappointments are woven in the fabric of our existence. And when I think about my journey to where I'm at this moment, there's two words that comes in my mind: consistency and accountability. And consistency in the term, in the sense that I cannot be discouraged by no's, I cannot be discouraged by discomfort, and I cannot be discouraged by hardships. And when I talk about accountability, for me, it's twofold. So it's self-accountability and systems accountability. And I think self-accountability starts with me recognizing what were things that I was responsible to fix and what wasn't my burden. So my trauma was mine to heal. My destructive behaviors were mine to fix. My power was mine to get back and to keep. Additionally, in regards to self-accountability, I had to be very intentional about self and to feed my soul. And what I mean by that is to ensure that I employ a lot of self-care practices and surround myself with family and friends and mentors and allies that are invested in my wellness. Which brings me to the second piece, which is a systems accountability. I had to be mindful that I'm not as innately defective as colonial societies would like me to believe, and that there are systems that are invested in my destruction and dehumanization. So I have to keep going so I don't fall victim to the plan. So these are the things that keeps me going. I think safe spaces are important for everyone, especially Black individuals. But we do know that, when Black bodies gather as a collective, that informs a lot of discomfort in outsiders. And a lot of time that discomfort can translate into a racial harm. So you can't really tell Black individuals that a space is safe. And this brings me to the second piece, which is the discussion about brave spaces. I think when we're talking about bravery is something that when you're asking someone to be brave, or even yourself, when you're trying to be brave, there's normally an inclination or an idea of the nature of what you're anticipating and what you're expecting, right? You normally have a little bit of an idea of what you're being brave for. And I think with Black individuals, their existence is rooted in uncertainty and tragedy. So I think bravery is a big thing to ask of Black bodies. So I don't have any absolute step as to how to inform brave spaces, but what I can say to individuals is to kind of navigate as your authentic self. So that way, if you are welcomed, or if you're received, if you're welcome or if you face challenges, if you're navigating as your authentic self, you can never go wrong with that. And I think for institutions who who are saying that they're interested in facilitating brave spaces for racialized individuals. I think it's imperative that they have individuals from these marginalized community, and not just any individuals, uncompromised individuals. And what I mean by that is individuals who are not aspiring for white acceptance. But we need to have racialized individuals or marginalized individuals from these communities facilitating these possible brave spaces as a first step. Black trauma and Black stressors are systemically informed and maintained, so they're persistent, and you see it generationally. And that's kind of the big difference compared to non-racialized clients that I see. And I think individuals who are providing support to Black individuals need to have this understanding in order to facilitate ethical support and in order for you to have an informed tolerance. I think the main theme in presentation concerns in my therapy sessions with Black clients is that all the time their presentation is always rooted in trauma, more so in racial trauma, even if the client is aware of the racial influences or not. So I'll give you a scenario. So a client may present for therapy, a Black client might present for therapy, and they're having suicide ideations. And they're feeling unsupported, unacceptable, and they're feeling burdensome in their intimate relationship. So a client might come to me, and as we're unpacking, we realize that this client, these feelings that this client is experiencing have been present since childhood, right? We unpack and we realize that this client has been feeling this way since his father was racially profiled and lost his life, which led to his mom being overwhelmed and was unable to take care of him. So this is where that feeling unsupported started, when his mom wasn't able to take care of him. You dig a little deeper, you realize that because mom wasn't able to take care of him, he was put in a all-white foster home, right, where he felt deviant and he felt like an outlier. So this is where his feeling of unacceptableness started. And then you dig a little deeper and you realize that when he was in this all-white foster home, he was reaching out to his extended family, and he was reaching out to his caseworker, and they were telling him that where he's at was better than where he was before. And this is where that feeling of burdensome started. So even though to him in his adult life, he's having the feeling of, feeling unsupported and unacceptable and burdensome, and he's relating it to his intimate relationship, when we really unpack it, we realize that he's having these feelings since his childhood, and there are racial roots that is informing these feelings and his current mental health presentation. In comparison to a non-Black client, non-racialized client, I find when they present to me in therapy, a lot of their, not that they don't have trauma, I realize the difference in trauma between Black individuals and non-Black and non-racialized individuals is that non-racialized individuals' trauma normally starts with them. It's not generationally as the Black clients. So non-Black clients or non-racialized clients normally present to therapy, and a lot of time their mental unwellness symptoms is related to personal or familial or social dissonance, right? So a lot of burnout or a lot of divorce-related stuff, some trauma as well. But as I mentioned before, it's not as chronic, and you do not see it generationally because it's not systemically informed and maintained. Two things come to mind when I think about healthy and inclusive community. I think about equitable accommodation and reconciliation. And what I mean by that is meeting individuals where they're at, economically, racially, socially. What I also mean by that is, admitting harm to marginalized folks and meeting individuals' demands on their terms. I think we also have to be intentional to start having the discussion about the changing of the guards, right? A lot of the traditional guards and gatekeepers are complicit in marginalized communities' oppressive realities. So they're not morally inclined or capable to get us where we need to be. So we need to start having that discussion, and that is what inclusive communities look like to me. I think productive allyship to me looks like non-racialized individuals understanding that in spaces where they have absolute power and where their voice is the dominant voice is, harm is being done. Even if you intend to or not, harm is being done. So I think non-racialized individuals have to be intentional to ensure that they have ensure that they're, sharing seats and sometimes even give up their seats to these marginalized and racialized communities if they're committed to not perpetuating harm on these communities. I think we need to start finding comfort in discomfort. I think if we need to, especially for non-racialized individuals, I think if we want to see changes, we have to be open to do things differently. And the current gatekeepers and the current old guards, current realities are not informing the level of change that we need to see to offset or to remedy the level of harm that was done in racialized communities. So we have to start having that discussion about the changing of the guards, because ultimately we mentioned that we've tried many things to see change, but we're avoiding one of the main things that can inform us with change, which is to remove or to add different individuals in these positions of power, because the old guards, are the creators and the benefactors of these systems. So they're not morally inclined. They're not morally inclined or have the capacity to give us the change that we want. So that's the reason why we're not seeing the level of change to offset the level of harm that was done in marginalized and racialized community, is because the creators and the benefactors of these systems are still in play. I think when I think about Black history, it has two meanings for me. The first meaning is the first step towards reconciliation and healing. And I think the second step is validation of my humanity. Those are the two things that comes to me. And I think there are so many different historical and current realities that prevents Black bodies from seeing themselves, realities such as, racism, discrimination, redlining, interracial trauma, etc., that prevent Black bodies from seeing themselves in positions of prominence and prestige. And I find Black history kind of created that balance. For us. So I think whether it's, hearing about Black history only within the shortest month of the year, within February, or a person like myself that incorporate it in your everyday life, I think acknowledging and hearing about Black pioneers and Black leaders provides me with a sense of legitimization and racial pride. And I think these are important feelings to have as Black bodies, especially because we're navigating in societies that are invested in our racial confusion and thrives when we are not feeling and thinking about ourselves in a comprehensive and healthy manner. So that's what Black history means to me.
Jacoda. We're living in a time where our people are thriving, our people are rising. It's a beautiful thing. But the reality is there's still a lot of work that needs to be done, and we're still on our healing journey. So we're gonna need your help. We're still trying to heal from it. Suicide, we're still trying to heal from it. Missing and murder, we're still trying to heal from it. Intergenerational trauma, we're trying to heal from it. To know the truth helps us heal from it. To tell our stories helps us heal from it. To learn our language helps us heal from it. So stay strong, let the song help us heal from it. It's gonna take at least 7 generations to heal the damage done caused by colonization. It's time that we change this patriarch legislation. We need the matriarchs to step into the occupation. For this to truly work, we need a new proclamation. United Nations Declaration, self-determination. Let's build economical wealth on a reservation. Transition off the Indian Act takes coordination. There's still a lot of work to be done, that's why I'm vocal. Every time I see our people succeed, I'm feeling hopeful. Cause now is the time for the resurgence of our people. It's time to buy our land back in order to be equal. It's so unfortunate, that's the way that it's gonna be. Reconnecting to the land, we shouldn't have to pay a fee. Start stacking up your dollars, let's build an economy. If I have to die trying, that's the way it's gonna be. Let's do this. We're still trying to heal from it. Suicide, we're still trying to heal from it. Missing and murder, we're still trying to heal from it. Intergenerational trauma, we're trying to heal from it. For real though. To know the truth helps us heal from it. Story, man. To tell our stories helps us heal from it. Truth. To To learn our language helps us heal from it. So stay strong, let the song help us heal from it. Investing all my time for the youth will always be worth it. Too many with anxiety, they need love and it's urgent. Let me tell you a story about this kid with depression. I brought him to the studio to record his first session. The music was his medicine, now things are looking up. Now he's repping for his people and he's never given up. That's a resurgence. When we make their dreams become real, that's a resurgence. Every time we help our kids to heal. Let me tell you a story about this young man's mother. Yo, she moved off of the res and then she found herself a lover. 2 kids in the house, she set goals to break the cycle. She changed her whole world cause she refused to be idle. Now both of her kids grew up in a loving environment. I'm telling you these stories cause to me they're so inspiring. The moral of the story is the future is our kids. We need more love in this world so we can help each other live. Let's do this. We're still trying to heal from it. Suicide, we're still trying to heal from it. Missing and murdered, we're still trying to heal from it. Intergenerational trauma, we're trying to heal from it. To know the truth helps us heal from it. To tell our stories helps us heal from it. To learn our language helps us heal from it. So stay strong, let the song help us heal from it.
What do? I'm a store manager, and why do I do the work that I do? Is to make a living. I'm also a dub poet, and why do I do that work? It's because I started at a young age, and it comes natural to me to read, write, rhyme, and recite. And I am a person, I really enjoy people. You know, the more I think about it, the more I find I enjoy people. And I get there, it's very rewarding to me to do the work that I do because I get a lot of feedback from people and they always seem so appreciative and show so much gratitude, and you just never know what to expect. And also, I have a motto to myself that I always like to make people feel better than how I found them. So if I see you, I want you to feel better after you finish dealing with me. I don't want you to feel worse at all. And I'm disappointed if I don't achieve that. So it gives me great pleasure to do the work that I do, dealing directly with people. You know, coming to a new country. At first, I was shy. My accent, of course, was, you know, when I speak, the Canadians couldn't understand me so very clearly. So I had to, you know, learn to do that. And eventually I got comfortable with it. There was, you know, just certain words, because in Jamaica, we speak English in school, but our language that we speak to each other is Jamaican. And but we have a different accent. So I'm in class and I'm saying words like, I would pronounce a word like, let's say like a word like, a word I like to use, character. You know, Canadians say character or something like that. So you're in class and you just say a simple word like that and you think you're pronouncing it the proper syllables and nobody's understanding what you say until one person goes, oh, character. And then you know, eventually you get it. Or the words like Toronto, they say Toronto. You know, it's little things like that, and I overcame them. Other barriers I had to overcome, and this, I guess, would have been a barrier in Jamaica too, because when I decided that, when I learned about Rastafarian and stuff like that, and started following that, you know, a lot of my people, family, not just outside people, turned up their nose at me. My own father, my own mother, you know, and that's normal. That's normal for Jamaican. And you know, speaking Jamaican language even too, which I love and I indulge in, they say, oh, speak proper English, you know. Barriers like that I had to overcome, you know. But like I said, you know, I pretty well got comfortable with myself eventually, and those things, you know, I can handle them now with ease. My family has helped me get to where I am. For instance, in business, when I had the idea first, I went to my cousin because, you know, he's a kind of a workaholic. And I spoke to him and he said, well, why don't you talk to your mother? And I said, she does real estate and she could probably, because I'd seen a place that I was interested in. And then, so he drew my mother into it, and then she drew my aunt into it. My aunt had just retired and she was planning to go to university and for pastime do a master's degree. She had already had a bachelor's and stuff like that, you know, to keep her brain going. So there we took up her time, and my brother was alive at the time and we spoke to him and he was in. So, you know, they helped me as far as the business was concerned. Plus my grocery experience, which I didn't realize, that was, you know, I had absorbed so much. But then when you're ready to do something, you find that it's there. In terms of dub poetry, what has helped me are the theater groups that I've been a part of, Third World Players, Aguda Players, high school theater groups, the radio stations here in Ottawa, CKCU with Junior Smith and CHUO with Papa Richard. I've gotten immense work out of them. You know, and you know, there's a lot of people around. I can call some names. There's Carleton Braithwaite, who just died in Ottawa there. You know, God bless his soul. There's Carl Gordon. There's, I could name a lot of people around who have helped me, and that's in the theater side. There's the bands that I've worked with, the drummers that I've worked with, the organizations that I've worked with, the Jamaica Ottawa Community Association, the Trinidad Association, the Guyanese Association, among others. And yeah, it's been a long list of them. I wish I could name them all, and I want them all to know that I really appreciate it. To go in the direction that I go in terms of work, you gotta find what you are, you know, cut out for. And it's good when you start from you're young, if you could figure out exactly what you want to do, what you like to do, what you're strong in. And because everybody has to be an expert in something. And they say if you could spend, I think there's some numbers like 10,000 hours doing something before you're 20 years old or something like that, you're an expert at it. So try to find something that you like and you know, get into it. In terms of writing and performing, like some people don't like to be on stage at all, and some people enjoy it. So, you know, I like to write, I like to read, and I would advise people to learn to read as much as possible, learn to add and subtract and multiply and divide. That's just the basic parts of math, because any kind of math you do, you have to do those things. And, you know, basically try and figure out what your strong points are and develop them, because everybody has something that they can do very well, and they should really, really get on it and don't allow anything to distract you, you know, from it. Black history. Well, first of all, I'd like to say, try to imagine living without Black History Month. It means empowerment to us. It means strength. It's unity. It's knowledge. It's wisdom. It's you know, history basically is learning about the past, okay? Now, the future is there, but guess what? That same future is going to become present and it's going to become past. So we're always making history. In terms of Black history specifically, it has been suppressed, deliberately suppressed. If you go back in time, you can see the contributions that we have made on this planet has been shut down or even stolen or colonized. You know, let's say like music. All the music you hear in North America, all the popular music, where do you think it comes from? We save the planet with our music. Jazz, they used to call it devil music. Blues, they used to call it devil music. In Jamaica, reggae was rag song and it had the worst names possible. You know, and rock and roll, where do you think it comes from? I mean, the greatest rock and roll performers, if you look at the lists, are always the Europeans, but once upon a time, they were just copying people like Chuck Berry and and Little Richard and all those people. And they were only playing their music. Then eventually they figured they could write their own music. One of the greatest songs, it's called How Many Roads Must a Man Walk Down? The Answer is Blowing in the Wind by Bob Dylan. He wrote the words, but the melody is an old Negro song called No More Auction Block for Me. And he took that and he made millions out of it. And then eventually they found out and he admitted, yeah, that's where the melody came from. Beach Boys, a lot of them were sued for the music because they just copied the other people's music and made it, you know. So yes, without Black History Month, it has to make up for the deficit that was there to bring it up to par. We don't have White History Month, we don't have Chinese History Month. Those histories weren't really suppressed. Yet still, every history is relevant, you know. So it's just bringing up the relevance of our history because they have tried to smudge it out. And you know, once upon a time they used to define Black people as a commodity, as an object. And they did it with other Indigenous peoples too. Even here in Canada, they were non-persons. The first Prime Minister of Canada defined the people here as non-people. I mean, he was working for, I guess, the throne, the crown in England, so it tells you where that comes from. When they went to Africa, if you have a chance, you know, Google the Berlin Conference, where I think 14 or 15 European countries got together and decided how they were going to cut up Africa and share up Africa. And we didn't know that. We don't know these things. And when you find out, it's a shock. I remember the first time I told one of my sons about it, and he just twisted it on one side and said, there's something really wrong about that. How could they sit down in Europe and have a conference about sharing up Africa and cutting it up and you know, creating different countries? Some were landlocked, cutting them off from the sea and all that type of stuff. And then they fought over it. That's what World War I and World War II was all about. Most people wouldn't know that because they couldn't agree on the Treaty of Versailles or the other treaties that they made. Countries like Germany felt that they were cheated. America was a part of the conference because they had investment interest in there. They didn't have interest in putting up their flag and colonizing, but you know, we've been subject to all of that. And so it's the part that Black history played in the world that we want to emphasize and bring up. And this is why Black History Month, you know, is there. And I can't imagine not having it, considering what happened before. You know, in Africa, they don't need to have Black History Month, although some countries are now, 1 or 2 countries are now recognizing it. In Europe, some countries have it in October, but you know, we need to have the knowledge because the knowledge is fulfilling. Whether it's the good history or the bad history, knowing stuff is very fulfilling, and we need to know these things. I'm proud of our Caribbean mothers who came here. I'm proud of that achievement. Since 1911, Canada had a whites-only immigration policy, and in 1959, it changed to allow these people to come in here because they were getting a lot of people coming up from the States, Oklahoma especially, and they even sent people down there from Canada to tell them down there that the weather up here doesn't suit their type, so they shouldn't come up here. They tried to discourage them. And then I think it was Wilfrid Laurier was the Prime Minister at the time. They brought in a whites-only immigration policy, I'm afraid to say. I mean, other people came through other means, I guess, but that, you know, that was there. That was one of the things. The achievements of Canada, I'm proud of Michael Jean being the Governor General, Jean Agustin being MP, and she's the one who actually got the federal government to make Black History Month official under Jean Chrétien. I think that was in about 1994, somewhere around there, if I remember correctly. I'm proud of a Jamaican named Louise Bennett who retired and lived in Canada because she's the one who, in Jamaica, she defined our language as a language, and they were trying to say our language is a corruption of the English language. She says, well, if our language is a corruption of the English language, what is the English language? They said the English language derived, and she says, well, if the English language derived, our language derived too. So, you know, she was quite vocal, and she had her master's degree in literature, as far as I know. And once she left England, she worked on the BBC when she was there while she was studying. at, I think it was London University. Once she left England and came to Jamaica, I don't think she spoke another word of English. And then she came to live in Canada, and to be honest, I had the opportunity to drive her in my car to an interview at the radio station as a volunteer, and I got to sit in my car and talk to Miss Lou, because I used to hear her on the radio every day in Jamaica, so she had a profound influence on me, even up to today, and I think she should be made a national hero. So I'm proud of that achievement in Canada. I'm proud of our achievements in Canada as a people who live here, that we can come here and set up our families and start our business. And by the way, from the first woman who came here, there is a whole nation, I would say, of people coming out of that woman, including my aunt was one of the first people who came here. They were allowed to work for a year, and then they could apply for their immigration, landed immigrant status. I have learned, and I'd like to impart to others, some of the most basic things in life: politeness, manners, always acknowledging other people's space and time. You know, they have a right, they have their own truth, so don't try to rule them with your truth. They have their own life. You don't know what they're going home to, so you have to be considerate. We don't know what mood a person is in when we see them, so we should approach them always with, dignity and show them respect. And also educate yourself, because education is not just the learning of facts. Education means to train, put in, but educe, the word, means to come out. So you have to learn to bring out what you put in. So education is not just the learning of facts, it's thinking in the moment when you need it, bringing out what you need when you need it. So I'd like to advise the young people to be able to be aware of what's coming, what's going in and what's coming out. In life, you go different places, you meet different people. Travel is a very good thing. You become very tolerant when you travel and see different people. You learn to appreciate them. And everybody, you learn from everything. Anywhere you go, anyone you meet, you learn. You can always learn something from them. So always seek learning and, knowledge, wisdom, understanding. When there is confusion, it's a problem. When the confusion clears, then that's when the wisdom arises. When the wisdom arises, that's when the reality sets in.
I do radio, which is one of the things that has been generated as an opportunity since I was a student at the University of Ottawa around 1993. I'm an educator locally. I started off as an educational assistant for the Catholic Board, and I translated that into going to Teachers College and becoming a high school educator. And right out of Teachers College, I got hired at the school where I continue to work and teach. I've done curriculum writing, I've done policy writing. I found an interest in writing about the school-to-prison pipeline and working with my friend Deborah Peterson-Small and her organization as she works on the war on drugs as it impacts communities of color. I've coached basketball for a very long time. I was a coach in my early years of high school basketball at St. Pat's High School. And then after Teachers College, I began and continued coaching at Woodruff High School. But I'm also the co-founder of a club team, Ottawa Phoenix Basketball, with my coaching partner, Andy Waterman. Innovative approaches to teaching during COVID. I found my feelings and mood were a mirror for what my students were going through. On top of, being thrown as a grade 12 student into this remote learning model, I was as well. And then the weight of what was going on in the world, we found some days we were all feeling very heavy and we were very, sad. And, I thought this was the perfect way to sort of incorporate the things that I love, music and storytelling. And so, although I can do that in the classroom, it became more important to me to sort of find a way to make my students feel good And if I was gonna do that, then I needed to find a way to make myself feel good. So I told stories, we listened to music together, we built pandemic playlists together, what was our go-to music, what was our go-to artist, and we used poetry and language and storytelling, and that's what seems to have given me a additional tool to remote learning. I do what I do because it is my goal to find as many moments as possible to be my vision fulfilled. I am empowerment through laughter, which means that I find moments that bring joy and happiness, and in generating laughter through the things that I've done in this world, it is like a sustainable energy for me to continue to be a creative thinker of transformation of my world. I'm born in 1967, so one of the events or the historic period of time that would be most impactful in my life is the 60s. Black Panther Party, and I would have approached that or been exposed to that through sport. So I would say the moment that really continues to craft my thinking or center my thinking, 1968 Mexico City Olympic Games. Tommy Smith and John Carlos on that podium. And I have continued to learn more and more about that moment and how relevant it is and speaks to the things that athletes were saying and continue to use their platform to say today. And how connected that is and feels like to a moment of Colin Kaepernick. So to follow John Carlos's story today, and not only the story of John Carlos, but the story of an ally who stood on that podium as well, the Australian athlete. I think that just cements something about the world that we live in today, and how we've been a continued message to the world about how some of anti-Black racism, the language we use now, has always impacted our lives, that we've always resisted, we've always fought back, we've always had a plan to do something else and different. Overcoming barriers and obstacles is a question I'm often asked, and I have to admit, one of my challenges is I don't often see those things as obstacles and barriers. I know they exist. I know that they can often tell me or send me a message that there's something that somebody thinks I cannot do. But I don't quite hold it like that. And I now reflect back on my life and look at some of the decisions I've made and the choices and opportunities, the choices that have led to the opportunities that I've had. And I was like, did I actually consider what it would be like to be a Black woman who coaches boys basketball? Did I actually stop and have that conversation? And the truth is, no, I did not. Did I have a conversation about what it would be like to be the only black person or Black woman on a staff where the high school serves the needs of many people in a community that look like me? Did I have that conversation? No, I don't think I had that explicit version of the conversation. And I'm also very clear that there was a time in my life where I did not respond well to the feeling of those challenges and obstacles and barriers when I did notice them. I rebelled, I was immature, I fought back in a way that was maybe detrimental to my own health and spirit. And then I settled into a different type of comfort about who I was as a person. And I am more than capable, more than strong to meet every one of those challenges and overcome all of those barriers so that I too can live my best life. I am a Cancerian, born under the moon of June, end of June, which means that I am loyal and need to be surrounded by a very close circle of friends. And grateful for every single day that I discovered this group of sister friends that continue to be the support and support network that a person like me who has an outgoing element of my personality, but I'm also a person who can cloister for long periods of time alone. With friends that understand that and you know, just accept that as the two parts of your personality, I would have to say there is nothing that has fed my energy to remain positive and remain contributing than the women of 3 dreads and a bald head. So that is Jacqueline Lawrence, Michelle Sims, Sean Sims, and our recently deceased friend, Michelle Walker, who, you know, I don't sell them on anything. They surround me with love, and they continue to support every single thing that I've created. So systemic racism in the education system, you know, it's real, it's true, it exists. I think I began to distinguish what we consider involvement versus engagement. We have lots of Black parents who are incredibly involved in their child's education. They ensure that their children have the tools available to them to be successful. They make sure their child is dressed and ready and there in the building. And then there's engagement, the way that we as an institution claim that is the only type of engagement that's acceptable. Like, you have to be at the parent-teacher interview, you have to be on the parent council. When I look at that piece, sometimes it used to get me so sad to be at a Meet the Teacher night or at the parent-teacher interview or at a school-based event, because who showed up looked nothing like what the school looked like during the day. And it began, you know, a series of questions. What have we actually done different to get parents from diverse communities? Have we actually done anything different? And the answer is no. We send out an email in a single language, and then we, you know, say, hey, the school's open. But have we given the school a chance to set the conditions to not just be open, but to be welcoming? And that, I think, is the work that we continue to have to do. We have to find ways, the same way we say we have to find diverse learning ways or diverse learning opportunities, we have to find the diverse learning, the diverse ways to attract parents to the building. We have to find the ways that that school in your community is the center of what your community does and creates. If that's not what is happening, then we haven't done enough yet, and there's still lots for us to have questions and answers for what it is that we need to do. I think going out and asking Black parents what the barriers are is only one of the steps, but maybe we need to go further and ask Black parents, how would you like to use this school for your community needs? How would you like this school to be in your hands and control to satisfy what your children need and want from their education? And so we might have to do more by going out there and speaking to Black parents. Black History Month means to me, I think what I'm doing right now is really trying to embrace the essence of what Carter G. Woodson wanted to see when it was Negro History Week. He wanted to have an opportunity to celebrate what it is that people of African descent have contributed to the world, contributed to his world. As that has expanded here in Canada, with this being the 25th anniversary of that declaration being made by Jean Augustine for February to be recognized as Black History Month, I see that as the same goal, that we can set the narrative of what Black History Month means to us. And we can do that in the month of February. We can do that for an entire month, and we can celebrate the contributions that we've made in the past, the contributions we're making right now, and our hopes for the future, which is why African Heritage Month, African Legacy Month are all offshoots of different parts of this conversation. So it's a moment to sort of give us the fuel and energy for the rest of our year in being creatives in our community, but it's also a time to sit down and take a moment to look across our world and say, hey, you know what? I'm already Black magic. You know, just like, please stop playing with us. You can come visit us on February, but if you wait till only February to get some of this Black magic, you're gonna be sad. Black history is every month because I'm Black every single month. I'm Black every single day. So that is my theme for this month. I am Black history every day. Because we look at, you have to have done this or maybe done that for us to celebrate you, but no. We are every single day, our joy is revolutionary. Our continue to be here and live in a fruitful understanding that says we are more than what you claim we are means that every single day I put down a nugget, a cookie, a breadcrumb of something that leads to my contribution to this generation's push. I am Black history, 365, 24/7, and 366 on a leap year. I'm always reminded of this amazing line in a slam poetry series that I was in the audience for, and I'm always playing chess, not checkers. This is straight up. Everything we do with intention. Even when we don't know we're doing it with intention. We are doing things with intention, and that's the strategy. Surrounding myself with people who already believe and don't need to be convinced means that I'm not only surrounded by people in the community, but I also have a series of allies and co-conspirators who are working their privileges to also support and do what we have going on. But more than anything, they're in the world and in the space moving, using their privilege to sort of dismantle some of the things that challenge us. So strategic in that where we can offer our voice and lend our energy to pushing the barriers, pushing back on some of these things, I think is strategic. Using my privilege that, I do have a privilege. I have a privilege to be in spaces that some of my students don't have the same privilege to be in. I have the privilege to move through our community in a way that not everybody has privilege to do. And anytime, like moments like this, when somebody says, hey, we have a vision for what your voice can lend to moving something forward, I am down. I am down for anything, and many people know that the best way to maybe sell me, if a sell needs to be, say it's for the community, and I will bend over to make sure that this is something that if I have the capacity to do it, then I have the capacity to contribute. Productive allyship looks like people pushing in the spaces where they have the capacity to push. So doing the work of transforming your own worlds, not so that you can fix Black people, but so that you can fix the supremacy, fix the whiteness of our world being a dominant understanding. So use your position and privilege and power to speak to your friends, to your family. And I don't know, I know this is it's simple. Get some Black friends. That also is really helpful. I say that often. Get some Black friends. Explore your world outside of your, little niche, and then, in the spaces where those people are underrepresented, push for them. Push for them to win, because I know I'm pushing for all Black people to win. And so I have friends that don't look like me who are also pushing for Black people to win. And if we all do that, then we'll win. Is advice that I wish somebody had given to me. Lead with empathy, love, and joy, because you have to live in that kind of space in this work to do it for a long time. Even though you have ups and downs where it seems like the world is not responding to your passion and your energy, these other tools of empathy, grace, love, joy are also revolutionary tools, and use those as well. That's what somebody I wish had told me, that don't sacrifice your happiness for the movement. Even Martin Luther King Jr. took his children to the beach, like, damn. What steps can we take? Well, this is one I say often on my show. Get some young people in your life. Get some young people in your life. Go and be in the places where young people are at. I think I got upset with communities who, would design these things, claiming they were for the young people, and then look to get the young person afterwards. Young people need to be part of your actual organization or your institution's succession plan. If there are not young people sitting around your table, or if you have not created a table for young people to create for themselves, then that might be something to take a look at moving forward. If you want to leave a legacy for young people, you need to have a space for young people to be able to perform and practice some of the things that you claim they're just gonna get from it dropping from the sky. If we don't talk with them, then I'm not sure how, one, we're able to understand and know what it is they actually might need, and two, how are we going to deliver it to them if we, when we need to, if we don't surround ourselves with not only young voices, but young energy. Like, I still remember the young version of myself, the teenager in me. And I want to remain as connected to that young person as possible. If I have to then find the versions of myself out there in the world to keep me connected to the one that's locked in me, then that's what I'm willing to do. And I think that that's what organizations need to do. They need to find a space for young people to be. I think I'm most proud of our communities finding their way, finding a lane and continuing to be creative and innovative. We're in a renaissance that we're contributing things to the world that show how beautiful we are. And most of all, we make things real. We make it true. We make it true that democracy works. We make it true that equality and equity are the things we should lead with. We make it true that out of all of this, we can still love and support each other. We make it true that no matter what, our communities can come together and find solutions for our communities that will best help us survive and thrive and just be able to be.
A thousand words won't be enough to sing the praise of my Savior, of my Savior. He who was and is to come, the risen King, holds all power, holds all power. Only you are holy, mighty, worthy of glory. We will praise you now. Only you are awesome, righteous, King in the heavens. We will crown you now. Our defender, our strong tower, Jehovah, Jehovah. You are for us, not against us, Jehovah, Jehovah. Yeah. The ancient words will never change, will never fade. I'm surrounded, I'm surrounded. Hell, in the den, filled with lions, you shut their mouths. I walk freely, I walk freely. awesome, righteous King in the heavens. We will crown you now. We will crown you now. Our strong tower, Jehovah, Jehovah. Father, you are for us, not against us. Jehovah, hey, you are a defender. You are a strong tower. Your name is Jehovah. You are for us.
We want to thank you all for watching this video presentation dedicated to Black history. For some final thoughts, we hand things over to Carleton University's President and Vice Chancellor, Benoit-Antoine Bacon.
Good evening, everyone. Bonsoir tout le monde. J'espère que ça va bien. It's a real pleasure to join you all for this important celebration of Black History Month. I really wish we were all together in person, but one of the advantages of meeting virtually is we get really huge crowds, so thanks so much for being with us tonight. Many, many thanks to everyone involved in bringing us together tonight, and in particular, our truly great School of Social Work. I love the title, Black History is Every Month, and we will live up to it at Carleton. As many of you will know, we recently completed a bold and ambitious EDI action plan. We have a lot of work to do. I want to take a moment to honor all the members of the Black community that make Carleton great, and I can't name everyone, but it's faculty like Kinduka Otiono, or Daniel McNeil, Nimo Bokore, Joy Mighty, and Abubakar Sanogo. Staff members, of course, like the wonderful Ikram Jama, Dati Wakanma, John Nelson, who moved into our office and has the difficult task of keeping our provost on track. It's my colleagues on the senior leadership team, AVP Michael Charles and Dean Patrice Smith, and of course, so many of our students, including two recent CUSSW presidents that I got to know well, David Oladeyo and Lili Akagbosu. Hundreds and hundreds of great people that make Carleton fantastic and such a wonderful community. Thank you for everything you do. Thank you, everyone. Thank you again to the organizing committee, and many thanks for including me. Merci beaucoup. Have a wonderful evening.
We would be remiss if we did not take the time to acknowledge our community partners that helped to make this Black History video tribute possible. That being said, we'd like to thank the Carleton University Black Student Alliance, Carleton University Equity and Inclusive Communities. We'd also like to thank Flow Seniors, Jaku Conbit, Lens Studio, and the Origin Arts and Community Center.
It was during Black History Month when I first experienced Black people being celebrated and being the main focus in school. It taught me that Black people are just as smart and just as capable as any white person. Black people have and can make a difference. They can change the world.
To me, Black History Month is an opportunity to reflect on what Black history has looked like specifically in Canada and how anti-Black racism has played a huge part in Canadian history and how it also continues to play a huge part in Canada's present.
To me, Black History Month is more than just a month. It's more than just storytelling, and it's more than just about your skin color. It's about the power within us and how we've overcome so much, and now we're still overcoming, and we're working on what's going on in the system and how we can work together as a community and as people.
Black History Month is every month, thanks to Black Canadian feminist scholars like Dion Brand, Peggy Bristol, Linda Carty, Doris Mullings, Nyoki Wayne, and many more. Their thought illuminates my students' minds and shows us all the way forward.
History is my heritage. Black history is excellence. Black history is me.
Black history is a celebration of the achievements of Black communities and Black Canadians, but it's also a reminder of the past and also a reflection on the present and the work that still needs to be done, the injustices that need to be addressed in an ever-evolving legal landscape.
Black History Month means to me the opportunity to learn and celebrate about all the contributions to my community.
Black History Month means to me an opportunity to learn and discuss something that's not commonly brought up in my classroom.
History Month is more just a month. It's every day, and it's not only learning about our trauma, it's learning about our successes, our resilience, our empowerment, and our contribution to society.
Black history goes back to the 17th century when slavery still existed in Canada. Historically and currently, there are several prominent Black Canadians in music, art, literature, sports, political work, civil rights activism, education, and all walks of life, really. And of course, there are many everyday people that have contributed to Canadian history and that give us reason to celebrate. Happy Black History.